So everybody is standing around. Most of you decide to cram your faces with food during this time, which is a very respectable choice. But as you do so, you look around and you notice that even though Maester Pycelle is supposed to be giving his introductory speech right about now, he has not shown up. And right when it really occurs to you that you don't know where he is, a small page boy runs up to Maester Julian and he says, Maester Pycelle says that he is attending the Queen right now and can't make it to the Conclave, and he asks you to say a few words on his behalf. And the page runs off.
Good luck.
What, to me?
Yeah.
And filling up time just before Mr. What's-His-Face comes back?
It doesn't appear Pycelle is going to be attending the Conclave.
Oh, so I'm just like opening up the ceremony?
Yeah.
I guess I say something like, "Welcome, all Maesters, to the something annual Conclave. It is a great honor to finally make it." I don't know what you do in conclaves yet, because I haven't been to one.
No, you're doing good.
But I pray blessing on your time and peace to you and protection for those back home from where you came far and wide across the shores. And commiserate amongst yourself and let knowledge abound.
Fantastic.
Nailed it.
Now roll persuasion.
Persuasion is 3, I think. 13.
What'd you get?
13.
Okay, so you make your speech and you look around and you see lots of smiles and nods and some light cheers from the Maesters gathering there. So everybody splits off into their lecture rooms.
Sweet.
So you guys should confirm the selection of what lecture you're going to be attending first and head into the appropriate room.
The Seven Lights. Sorry. The God One in modern times.
Yeah, you're going to the Light of the Seven. It's used in modern times. So you waddle off in that direction.
Yeah.
I have such a clear image of that in my head. Just an old man.
It's a good adjective, waddle, isn't it? Really paints a picture. So the rest of you are going to go. Yeah, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. Are we all going to the same thing?
I'm going to the maths.
You're going to the maths?
Cool. Maester Barely is attending Deciphering Cause of Death Post-Mortem.
And Maester Snow is also attending Cause of Death Post-Mortem.
Cool. So you guys all file into your respective lecture halls, and all of you just roll awareness real fast to figure out who I'm going to first. Who's Conclave second? First.
Wait, say notice?
I got a 16.
16?
13.
Sorry,
10.
Awareness?
Oh shit. Retry. I got an 8.
Sassy?
Which roll, TF?
The just awareness?
Yeah.
Have a notice. Does that count or is that on your part?
Nah, please don't use notice.
Okay. That's a 5. Hold on. That's still 5.
So really 5?
5.
Alright, so you're last. Why did you re-roll to 8 HP?
rolled 4 instead of 3.
All right. Well, that means Bob and our guys are up first. Which, I'm sorry to tell you, but is probably going to be the most interesting of any of these interactions and lectures. But I'll do my best. So,
I would like to change and go to the more interesting one.
do you want to do that?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you positive? Is that your final answer? Would you like to phone a
Yes.
friend? Okay. So you do not change. You sit down. And you light this up. Okay, so you guys, you two walk into deciphering cause of death, postmortem, and it's a rectangular hall, with the shorter sides of the rectangles being the back and entrance of the room and the front of the room, and there's a lot of chairs set up, one main
my
aisle
God.
right down the middle. What?
There's chairs, thank God.
There's a lot of chairs set up. It's a big one main aisle. There's chairs set out on either side of that, and then there's a raised platform at the end where the stage where the speaker sits, and there's a chair there, and there's a podium. But it appears to be up to the individual speaker whether he wants to sit and talk or stand and talk, whatever he's most comfortable with. And you sit down and you're patiently waiting, and a man walks up and he sits down in the chair and he pulls out a pipe and he lights it as he's sitting there, and he looks out at you and he says, "My name is Maester Holmes. I am from the Riverlands. And today we will be talking about deciphering the cause of death, post-mortem. And what this means is just figuring out how and why a particular person died, and especially in what manner. And in my experience, the way a person died can tell you a lot about the circumstances surrounding their death. I have been a maester in one of the low branches of the Frey household for quite some time, and as you may have heard and imagined, there is rampant murder among the nobles of my area, and I have become fairly adept at figuring out especially the kind of personality behind people that commit these kinds of murders. And so he says, the three things, especially, that I have come to very truly understand, very well indicate how a body died, are blood splatter, defensive wounds, and cut shape. So, first off, I would like to talk about the blood splatter. When approaching a dead body, you should very carefully examine where there is actually blood, and maybe even more importantly, where there is not. And at this point, Bob, you should roll a d20.
Nine.
Okay, that was fast. So, as he starts describing these three different characteristics, you start to have an episode of PTSD, and so you start to shake and seizure. And as he's describing these things, it's very mild at first, like you wouldn't necessarily note it, but it's getting increasingly worse. It's going to be very noticeable by the third thing he talks about. So the first is blood splatter, and he talks a lot about, if there is blood on the ground, but the body is in a vastly different place from where that blood is, but there doesn't appear it's only enough blood for one person. They were likely cut standing up and were still alive enough to move or were moved after they died. And you start getting flashbacks to Hamish Flowers laying on the bed, as the Fox Knight was attempting to escape, and how his throat was slit and there was slight spurts of blood like on his clothes, but most of it was trickling down across his neck and pooling behind him, which would be a very good example of this he's talking about. Or the difference between that and you start to have a different flashback to Eighth beheading one of the bandits on the side of the road, the one that was pinned by the Shadow Cat. And you remember how violent and vastly different that was from Hamish Flowers, because there's a lot more movement. He was struggling as he did it. The entire angle of where it was cut was completely different because the guy's head was tilted up, and so the spray actually went outward, not just kind of up, but mostly back. And so there's that. He moves on and he starts talking about defensive wounds, and he talks about how examining the body can tell you a lot about the manner in which they died. Especially look at how precisely they died, be it blood loss or it could be as simple as their skull was crushed. But you should also look at the body as a whole. Start talking about seeing a lady who had knife marks. Her throat was cut, but she had knife marks all over her hands and her arms, indicating that before she died, she actually knew who her attacker was conscient of that attacker, and was actually actively trying to repel his attack when she died. And you start having flashbacks of all those dead sellswords laying on the road with their throats cut, and their bodies have been picked at by the wolves and the ravens. And you also remember the bandit that Ulrich smashed in the face with his shield. How much blood was coming out of his nose and dripping down from his broken nose all over his face, and how much of a difference that made. Comparing that body to other bodies. And finally, he talks about the cut shape. So, as how a body is actually cut varies differently, quite different by the kind of implement that was used. A very clean cut will always be very quick and very smooth. It will be very smooth in origin. It will be flat, and this is an indication of a man using proper steel to wound his enemies. And then he starts talking about really, really jagged cuts. And he says, I once had a young boy murder his older father, or his older brother, with a sharpened rock that he had found down by the river. And he had sharpened this rock on a piece of stone in the hole, but it was very jagged. The blade was very, very jagged in origin. And when the boy cut his brother, the wound itself was not a smooth, very straight line. It was jagged. It was deeper in some places than others, and especially it was not a straight line. It cut back and forth. And at this point, he looks out over the crowd and he notices how bad of seizures you're having. And at that moment, you are, as he's describing this cut shape, you think of Hamish Flowers again, and how smooth that the cut to his throat was, and you especially and remember how like uniform the blood was pouring out of his neck to either side of it. And you also remember a dead woman. So you remember that she's about 33 years old, and she has a very jagged cut from her top left shoulder all the way down to her bottom right hip, and it's jagged, it's brutal, and you remember her lying dead at your feet, and there's burning and smoldering ashes all around you, and there's the scent of death and salt in the air.
Can I help him?
Yes, you can. At this point, yes, you can help him.
Alright, I'd like to roll a healing diagnose first to try to figure out how I can best help him.
Please do.
It is 21.
Quite excellent. Okay. You've actually encountered this kind of PTSD before, in other nobles before, and because the Tall Hearts have been warriors for forever, so it's bound to have happened to at least a few of them. And you know the best thing for him is really just essence of nightshade. And you shouldn't give him more than maybe 2 or 3 drops. It'll definitely help him sleep, and it'll calm his nerves and get him to stop moving and seizing, but it won't kill him.
Alright, did that have any degrees of success?
It did not know.
Okay. Then I would like to do a healing treat ailment.
Okay.
And then because I diagnosed him, I get an extra 2B that I'd like to convert into a test die.
Yep.
And then the 1 extra 1B for treat ailment.
I mean, you didn't really have to roll. I mean, you succeeded.
Being thorough.
Unless you roll all ones. Yeah, it's good to be thorough. But
19.
yeah, that's what I thought. So you realize what's happening to Daniel, and you go through the satchel bag that you have with you, because maesters carry these sorts of things with them all over. And you grab the small dropper tube that you have of essence of nightshade. And you ask a couple of other maesters around you to help restrain him and tilt his head back so you're able to. And you are able to apply the nightshade to his tongue. And very quickly settles down, and now appears to be just breathing very slowly and very deeply in his chair with his eyes closed.
It's nice to have another healer around.
It is very nice to have another healer around.
Especially since your healer gets taken out all the time.
All right, so right about that time, as you try to throw it back to Maester Holmes, so he could continue talking about his lecture, you realize that there has been other shouting that has been happening outside of the room during this time, and you guys didn't really notice, just because you were really distracted by Daniel. So yeah, that's what I want to do.
All of us or them two?
Just our guys.
Ooh. Shouting outside the room. I'd
Bob
like
is
to get a couple
currently
other maesters
incapacitated.
and
Yeah, sorry.
get some maesters with me, and I'll go check it out.
Okay, what do you say?
Does anyone else hear that shouting?
Roll persuasion.
My math is terrible today. That's 15.
Most of them nod, and a couple of them get up and start moving towards the door.
I follow the maesters that are moving and kind of gesture towards some others like, let's go.
Cool. So right as you walk out the door and try to enter the main gathering room, you walk out into it, and you are immediately hit in the face with a thick cloud of black smoke. And this is where we switch to a different person. So, I believe Healbust next.
Yo, what's time?
Am I just completely incapacitated right now?
You are completely incapacitated right now, my friend. I apologize.
Sorry, I drugged you.
You will be back up soon. But before you realize it, but you need to calm down so you don't hurt yourself or bite off your tongue or something drastic.
Small, medium. Doesn't matter. My turn?
Yes, your
Alright,
turn.
I'm listening now.
So, wow. So, you walk into the light of the seven, and this guy is sitting up there, and he's fairly knowledgeable. He says he studied to be a Septon for a time before he realized that his true calling was as a Maester. But he starts talking about really the fundamentals of what he was talking about is just what the light of the seven is all about. He goes into details of that I've already kind of given you guys of what each of the gods do. The father being the controller of justice, and the mother being merciful. And
Do I already know all of this?
you already know all of this.
Should I even be in this lecture hall?
You know most of this. There's gonna be a nugget takeaway at the end, but it's probably nothing super new that you didn't already understand.
Do I know more than this guy?
Probably yes.
Can I stand up and be like, I know more than you, and I would like to teach this class instead? And since he knows of me, and I've been like here for like ever, can I just teach it for him instead?
Yes, please. Roll persuasion.
Cool. Let me make sure it's 4. Yes, it is.
Oh,
Come on, baby!
That's really loud.
Oh, 16.
That's fine. So what do you say?
Well, first, Maester Fisher stands up, which isn't really impressive because really he is a super hunched old man. So like, standing up is like maybe 2 inches taller. And he says, "Hey, lad, why don't you let this old man teach it? I'm Maester Fisher. You know that I'm writing a book on this, right?"
The guy who is currently leading the lecture looks like he's about to piss his pants. And he bows very deeply, and he's like, Maester Fisher, please feel more than you can of course take over. And so he moves to sit down. So
You're not
now,
gonna make me roleplay this.
oh, I'm making you roleplay this. You wanted to teach a class on the Light of the Seven. I am now
damn.
sitting back and smiling and watching your character slowly hobble waddle to the front of the room.
The famous hobble waddle.
And he finally gets and,
Alright,
and
let
walks up
me-
the couple of steps, and he turns around and he sits down. He sits down in the chair.
Cool.
Hello?
Reading the Wikipedia article. Hang on.
Wow. Party foul.
Lolsies. Right now, there's just like an old man slowly
Hobbling up
with
there.
his walking stick, just slowly walking down the aisle.
Some time to research. You're slow.
An old man filled with regret, waiting to die alone.
Just reading a book while he's doing it. Way to wait to the last minute to prepare your speech.
Didn't you learn anything in high school?
I didn't actually think you would let me do this.
Yes, because your experience with the pissing contest last session just went so well, and I totally said no to you.
Okay, so I'd like to roll a knowledge check then.
All
On
right,
how much I know.
all right. Roll knowledge religion, bitch.
If he wins, you still have to make him teach the class roleplay.
Oh, of course I'm making you roleplay this.
Damn it! Okay.
I know your tricks.
Yes.
Oh, that's
okay, I
special
got 2
dice.
6s here, so that's good to know. And 2 4s? Yeah! 20.
What do you want me
So
to tell you? You're the world's leading expert in this religion. You know everything that there probably is to know.
Alright, cool. I'm just gonna start reading shit then.
Okay? It's gonna be super ass boring. 'Cause you're basically just sitting up there reading out the text.
Actually, I would like to have that change to convince and just convince everyone of something else that I read.
Roll persuasion, convince.
I'm scared.
Yeah, please.
I'll save your ass.
Aww.
Well, if you beat it.
14.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to call out our guys. So you get up.
What?
I said barely. Barely.
Oh.
Barely. I made a pun. I'm hilarious. Laugh at me.
Can we talk
So-
about superheroes for a little while?
No, we can. So Fisher gets up there, and he talks about how learned men in Westeros have no need of religion.
Yeah.
To be perfectly frank, we now have science, and much of what was believed to be magic or the gods has now been able to be explained by wisdom and by science. However, Maesters are only a very small portion of the world. Maesters only make up a very small percent of the population. There might be one or two to an entire castle or city. King's Landing is the largest city in the entire country, and it only has 7 or 8. So it's an extremely low percent of the population. Most people will not be able to read. Most people will not be able to understand the kinds of things that a maester would understand and would encounter on a day-to-day basis. Most people are farmers, and most people do not have time or energy or necessity to learn how to read and learn all of how these things actually work. And so, even though the maesters may not have much respect for religion, as in we do not think that you should believe this because this is not the work of the gods, this is just how life is. These kinds of arguments do not help the small folk, and so you really chastise the other maesters in your room, and you say, really, it's healthy to have, it's good to have a healthy understanding of how these things actually work, but telling these people that what helps them sleep at night and what helps their children sleep at night is wrong does not help anybody but your own egos.
Damn. So I slap it down.
You succeed.
Nice.
So that's what you said. And as you start wrapping that up, you hear shouting. You start to hear shouting outside.
Cool.
So what do you do?
I look to the one who was leading it and tell him to go check out what it is.
How do you say it? And roll persuasion.
For fuck's sake.
This is great.
I look at the guy. I guess I'll roll persuasion first.
Just call him lad.
Aye, lad. I rolled a 15. Aye, lad. I need you to go check out what all that shouting's about. I'm kind of a slow old man.
He stands up, and he runs over to the doors, and he he throws the 2 doors open, and you see smoke billowing outside, a dense black smoke. And then that's how we move to TF. So TF, you have chosen a mathematician's approach to household finances, and you find it very underwhelming, because this guy really just talks about arithmetic and saying having money in the bank at the end of the month is good. You don't want no money at the end of the month. Or even worse, negative money at the end of the month. You like positive money. And he also goes into the finer points of not wanting to, of encouraging households not to borrow from the Iron Bank of Bravos, The Iron Bank in Bravos is one of the, I think maybe is the only actual bank in this world, and you can put in for a loan, and they can give you a lot of money, but the interest rates on this money is absolute insanity. So he stands up there and he shows you some numbers about how much you would physically be actually paying back to them um, on a real sort of time scale, and how completely idiotic it is to borrow money. And he really cautions you to just not spend money more than anything else.
That's fair advice.
Yeah. So it's a very underwhelming lecture. But yeah. And as he's talking about, he's wrapping up his finer points about how much money you would actually have to pay back to the Iron Bank of Bravos, you hear shouting from outside.
And
Stand up.
I stand up.
Cool. So a couple other people get up with you, and most people's eyes follow you to the back of the room, and you throw open the doors, and there is a very dense black smoke coming in from outside.